to the fathers, to the sisters, to the brothers, all of us, all of us. We send this one out to the mothers, to the fathers, to the sisters, to the brothers, all of us.
My dad had a group home when we were growing up. So the people that lived with us were basically kids who had felonies, right? So kids who had committed felonies, the courts would send them to live with us, and that was basically my roommates growing up. We had at a certain point in time, every single kid in the group home was on honor roll, like 3.5 or higher GPA. So it gave me a unique perspective on the criminal justice system. And I saw people that got arrested or committed crimes. I saw that they were just regular people. I just saw them as friends and mentors a lot of times as I was growing up. So that was framing my perspective at a young age of like 9 or 10. I ended up going to dinner with my mom's friend's daughter, and she had just graduated from Howard Law School. She had married her husband, who she met also at Howard Law School. They were both lawyers. They're only a couple years older than me. That was my first time ever even meeting a lawyer. Like Alex was saying, like being able to imagine yourself somewhere. I saw somebody who was about 5 to 10 years older than me, of a young Black male, and they were lawyers. I didn't know any lawyers. I never didn't even really understand what lawyers did. But at that dinner, they were explaining to me like, oh, they loved law school. They told me a lot about Howard. They told me like what it takes to get there, but they told me in a way that kind of encouraged me. Like they didn't say how hard it was or didn't want to discourage me at all. They just said like, no, I could do it. You could do it. They just uplifted me and kind of became my mentors. Another thing that was happening at that time, I had a older brother who had a scholarship to play football at Boise State, and he was a starting running back, and he ended up getting a case for selling weed. So he got a felony case for selling weed, and he lost his scholarship, lost his position on the football team, and he could have went to the NFL. That the guy that was behind him actually did go to the NFL. I just saw how this felony changed his life for like the rest of his life. Like he didn't go to the NFL, and I just saw the struggles that he had even after he served his sentence. But I remember something that stuck with me is he was saying that the public defender didn't even know his name. And like, he didn't know what he looked like. He would come into court and just kind of, I don't know if this guy is here or not. And he'd have to raise his hand and say, hey, it's me. So just with a lawyer like that, he wasn't comfortable taking his case to trial. He kind of just felt pressured into taking a plea deal. So those two things combined with like my brother's experience, combined with being raised in a group home, combined with meeting the lawyers, it just kind of all connected at once and made me really passionate about wanting to go to law school and wanting to be a criminal defense attorney. So I ended up going to Howard, which is a school that my mentor went to. Everything that he did, I did. When I first started my law firm, there was a client that I basically took on his case pro bono. I mean, I didn't charge him a lot, if anything. But he was about the same age as me. We were very, like, when I met him, I was like, we were instantly friends, right? But he was around the same age as me, but I would just see him in the jail cell and me not. And we ended up taking the case to trial, but it was just, the stress and the pressure was really big because if we lost, he'd be sitting in a jail for 45 years to life. But we ended up winning his case, and it was just like, there's no feeling like it. I just think that it's a very, very rewarding career. To me, it's something like way bigger than money. Like, to give somebody their freedom, I think there's nothing like it. And I just really appreciate having mentors, and to be able to see somebody in a position, like having that Black mentor and see like this young Black man is doing something that I want to do. It just made it like real to me that I could envision, I could see myself doing it too.
So as Dr. Sterling said, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I can't tell you exactly when I decided that I wanted to become a psychologist, but I do know that our life experiences shape us. And I'm also a believer that each of us is born for a specific purpose and a specific reason, so that we are born with some of the abilities and capabilities we need to become what we were meant to be. My parents and my close family members will tell you that I was born a force, like a force to be reckoned with. I was always like an avid reader. And so when it was time for teachers to place kids in a reading group, I was in like the top reading group, you know? But when it was time for her to place kids in an enrichment program, I was not included. She told my mother that, you know, well, Sandra's not gifted. She has to work hard. But I knew in my heart that that little Asian girl, Juna Kim, I knew that little Indian boy, Robin, and that little white boy, Philip, were not smarter than me. I knew it inside myself. And I think that caused me to push even more. It didn't take me long for me to realize the difference between the kids who attended my school and the Black kids who attended like public school, for whom the teachers only expected them to, be good at sports or to take shop and, hands-on things, which there's nothing wrong with, except, no one's telling you that you could be a doctor or a lawyer. They're like, oh, that's great. You should, go on ahead and take those general classes. I think you'd make a good, whatever. But it was never, anything professional. So how did I decide that I wanted to become a psychologist? I remember as a child, I think I was a weird child. I used to watch talk shows a lot. I'm gonna date myself. I used to watch Oprah and Donahue and Sally Jesse Raphael. And I remember thinking to myself, any problem people had on the show, at some point, they'd always go to the psychologist who would give the same kind of advice that I would probably give, but it seemed like people believed them more because they had a PhD. So I just figured to myself, well, if I want to give advice, I need to get like that PhD so people will listen to what I have to say and I could, be like on Donahue or something. So I think that's where I developed this idea that I wanted to become a psychologist to reach people that look like me in non-traditional ways in settings where they could, really receive this information. I remember at one point, as an adult, or maybe like when I was at the end of high school, I ended up looking at this book that I had. It was a school days book. And it's those books where you have, what grade you're in and what you want to be when you grow up and all that kind of stuff. And I looked back at my school days book in grade 3. And in there, in grade 3, I said that I wanted to be a psychologist, a writer, and interior designer. I knew at that point as a 3rd grader what I wanted to be, but somehow life had taught me that I couldn't be what I wanted to be. So my just message to all of you today is pursue your dreams. It can happen.
I got to see my great-grandfather own a bicycle company in Barbados. My grandmother owned a grocery store in Barbados. My father owned his own electronic company. And then here I am. It's really important, the exposure of showing people that African Americans are brilliant, they're intelligent, and they are creative. And so for me, everything that I've done in my life and everything I've had the opportunity to do is about just doing that, is showing that and going out there every day, trying to be the best version of myself first, and then to do the best work I possibly can to change my world, the community in which I live, and the people who I'm around. I like fashion, I like style, and seeing that there weren't any accessories that I liked. I'm a minimalist and function, and I just decided, hey, if I don't see what I like, I'm gonna go make what I like. Around the time when I started that company, I noticed that African-American kids, most of the avenues that allowed them to escape the lots of poverty and the lots of that prison pipeline that both Aaron and Amy are out there fighting to keep us and our children out of, most of those avenues to get out are lotteries. If you play ball really, really good, you can throw your name in the hat, and somebody can pick one of the names out of the 1,000 of really good basketball players, and you can become a millionaire. All of those avenues, whether it's music, whether it's entertainment, whether it's sports, they're all lotteries to get successful. Computer information systems and technology has such a widespread reach, and there's no lottery. And so I created the C3 initiative to give African-American kids an avenue to create. All I'm doing is passing that tool down to kids. So I call myself an entrepreneur. I get to do that every day. I would encourage all of you, as much as possible, if you haven't heard one thing from everyone here, money should not be your prime objective. It is definitely icing on the cake, but it's definitely not the cake. So focus up on being something different, and then focus on doing something different.
While I always knew that my education and upbringing were a gift from God, I also knew that sending us to private school was a sacrifice. And I wanted to make my grandparents proud. So I finished high school I finished my high school education in all girls college prep high school, which still to this day has a 99% college acceptance rate. So from there, I eventually landed at USC, where I completed my undergrad degree, and then went on to Pepperdine University, where I obtained my master's and doctorate degrees in education. And although I wasn't particularly a very studious child growing up, because of my environment, both at home and at school, I fell in love with learning and discovered that with a lot of hard work and perseverance, I could succeed academically, which brings me to today. Although I'm extremely grateful to God and to my grandparents for loving me enough to place me in an environment where I could grow and thrive and become my best self, I remember thinking in high school that all kids should have the same high quality education that we were getting, regardless of one's ability to pay. So the Lord in his infinite wisdom took all of my experiences and led me down this path where I founded a charter school in my area 10 years ago this month, actually, for kids, yes, but particularly for kids who are underserved, the Black, brown, and low-income kids who need to know that with a lot of hard work, grit, and determination, like my grandfather, that they can do anything.
Right. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so, yeah, not having friends, all that, it really pushed me to really focus on my arts, drawing, performance, writing, my love for cartoons and film. And I think it also kind of taught me some perseverance, and as well as kind of figuring out, you know, if I'm in a room or a situation where it doesn't feel like people understand me or want me around, how do I make that work to my advantage? That's when Theo was like, hey man, why don't you come out to LA with me and let's do this film thing? And I got to tell you, the moment that I did that, everything kind of connected. You know, I realized that the resiliency that I was raised up in to fight through situations and through cultures and societies that don't really, you know, look at me as someone on the same level, that helped me, because the indie film hustle is no joke. You should not get into film unless you're willing to grind and you're willing to keep fighting through and perfecting your craft, regardless of what people think of you. But then also at the same time, you have to listen to what people say, find the truth in their criticisms, and improve what you're doing. I learned that resiliency. I learned that just my abilities for event planning, my knowledge of art, my natural tendency to being creative, it works really well in the film capacity, where I'm collaborating with a group of creatives and essentially creating a film is just a really big event.
I actually come from a lineage of physicians, so there was a little bit of unspoken pressure to become a doctor. So during undergrad, I made sure I found my group of friends who had the same mindset, and we studied together. We ate together. We made a lot of sacrifices. That's another thing. So finding support, family support. If you don't have family support, find that friend support. If your friend likes to go out and party, you know, Thirsty Thursdays, Taco Tuesdays, you know, instead of going to those things, you know, you go to the library and you study and you find your friends, because misery loves company. So finding friends that have the same mindset, and making those sacrifices. You know, I always told myself, short-term sacrifices for long-term goals. You always have to, you know, think of the big picture and say this is only temporary, because it really is. Another thing is balance. So I had the issue of I would study 7 days a week, but I burnt out early, and it took me to burn out for me to realize I need to take a day of rest.
Amen. What kind of doctor you are?
Oh, I'm an eye surgeon. My husband wanted me to tell you guys I'm an eye surgeon. I did follow my father's footsteps. Another thing that's really important, meditating or praying. You need an outlet. You know, networking. Start early. The more people that you meet that are in the field, the better off you are. We're people who are accomplished or who reach their goals. We always want to help others, because we have to give back, because we didn't do it by ourselves at all. You know, find people who are on the same path as you. You have to make that sacrifice. Surround yourself with like-minded people and meditate.
When I was 7 years old, I went to Universal Studios out here in California. We didn't really travel out west, but I got a chance to go to Universal Studios, and I wrote the Backlot Tour. A lot of you guys probably have wrote that. And I remember like being on that tour and like, you know, they take you like through like the sets and stuff like that. I remember like seeing people like shooting something. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but like, I want to do that. I have no idea what it is. I want to do that. Go back to Texas. Obviously, Texas is not like a hub for filmmaking. I look at a magazine for when I'm at Seventh Day Adventist. So I look at one of the Seventh Day Adventist magazines and I see this picture on the back of this black guy holding a camera. And he's like, I shot a movie in Ireland and you can too. I'm like, boom, that's it. I'm going to Southern. That literally was it. It wasn't anything more special than that. You know, I failed some classes there, passed some classes there, ended up graduating. I got a call from a friend who was like, it's super random, but I've got a job out here in LA or in California. Would you be interested in coming out? I'm like, wow, God, that's amazing. First call I make after that, hit up BJ. And I'm like, hey man, you want to try to do this movie thing for real? Go out here to California, ended up moving to LA. So much fun, lots of struggles, lots of terrible, terrible jobs that I never even thought I would do, like all those film stories of being sent across town for slippers. BJ and I would be like stuck in like warehouses, like going through actors' clothing to sort, like all this stuff. But I just love movies so much. I was able to start making like my own shorts, working on like commercials as a production assistant, which is like the lowest of the low. I started being able to move up to be what's called a assistant director. I started producing. You know, I always think about like this story. Not a story, but like this thing that happened to me a couple of years ago. I was producing a commercial for Universal, for NBC Universal. And we were shooting on the back lot. And I remember like shooting on the back lot, there's like, you know, 80 actors and crew and stuff like that. And I see that tram coming across. And like, I see this black kid who's like 7 years old. And I like look at him, like he looks at me and I point at him because I was that kid. Like special things really happen. Special things really, really, really happen. You know, I think it's just like that, work hard, surround yourself with people better than you, and trust God.
Yeah, Howard. I am a registered nurse. So RN BSN is Bachelor of Science in Nursing. The RN is, of course, registered nurse. I have been working for the last 11 years in my career. I grew up in a small town, moved out into the IE to go to nursing school. I went to a private university. I went to La Sierra University, did some of my undergrad or the prerequisites for the nursing program. And then I transferred over to California Baptist University and was one of, I think I was in the third class to graduate once they started their nursing program. As Alex said, over the last two and a half years, the career itself has kind of changed. I know everyone has kind of seen a lot of chaotic news in surrounding nursing and the healthcare field. But I will say that it is honestly one of the most rewarding decisions that I've made. I grew up, my family is the type that we're who you call when you need something. So I grew up in a church, small church also. And so if somebody needed to move, they called my dad. If somebody needed catering and help serving and things like that, they called my mom and my sisters. So it was very natural for me to go into a career that allowed me to help people. Currently, I work as a travel nurse. I do contracts that are anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months long throughout the Inland Empire, which is one of one of the benefits of being a nurse is there are so many options within the field.
My grandfather, he was one of the first persons to actually buy a property in Compton. He had a lot of challenges. Like, you know, he was also an entrepreneur. You know, he was a mason, someone like a brick maker. So he made his own money and he was able to actually purchase the house with cash. My grandmother out there, Tillman, she had 12 children. And one thing about her, she wanted something better for her kids. So she made sure that each one of them got an education. She stressed education. So although she had 12 children, all 12 of her kids went to high school and graduated, which was a big thing. You know, my mother, Patricia Tillman, was one of the first people to actually graduate from college. So even though like when she graduated from college, like one thing that stood out to me was the imagery. Like growing up, like a lot of people said, oh, you can't speak, or you can't write, or you're not educated, this, that, and the third. They told me a lot of things to doubt myself. You know, but when I came inside my house, I had my mother there and I had an imagery. She had a college degree up. And I think that just seeing it every day, even though people told me that I would never go to college, I never told myself that. So that's why I know it's about self-belief. I have to believe in myself. And that's why I thank my mother for the inspirational words that she gave me.
My name is Caitlin Hall. I am a pediatrician. I just want to quickly mention, in terms of my upbringing, I'm from Northern California, small suburb, predominantly white, so a very limited number of POCs in my high school, and I think that really influenced sort of who I sought to be around in college, i.e. I wanted to be around other people of color and who I wanted to work with in the communities I wanted to work in. So jumping right into my sort of schooling, I went to undergrad at UC Berkeley. I was a molecular and cell biology major, emphasis in immunology, and I want to pause here just to highlight a few of my own personal challenges in college. So I think when I entered college, I was not good at time management, and it definitely affected my grades. And unfortunately, grades are important for going to medical school if that's the path you choose. And I definitely have some C's on my transcript. All that to say that it's not, having bad grades is not going to stop you if this is the path you want. But if me saying that can help you to not have those on your transcript, I'm happy to say that. It wasn't until I was able to sort of figure out my own personal study habits. So I started only taking like 2 to 3 science classes a semester because I realized I couldn't handle more than that. I was getting bad grades when I didn't. I took 5 years in undergrad because I needed more time. I learned the importance of time management. I think undergrad, if you are able to, it should be fun, but it also, if your path is going to be medicine, you have to focus on studying. So once I was able to sort of schedule my studying and schedule my fun, that made a big difference. And then, I think being a science major to go to med school is not a requirement. If you have interest in something else, then you should pursue that. You just need to do the prerequisite classes, but you could be a Spanish major, you could be an English major, you could be an African American studies major. And I think that really helps to ensure that you get the grades that you want when you're really interested in the topic.
In the great void darkness, I was led astray. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, nor 4. I lay rabbits at the steps of hell's door. In darkness I've lived, and in darkness I've cried. But now I've been led into the path of light. I am no longer along the bed. The chains have been taken from my head. Deja vu, do you not see? How can you kill the chosen king?
To the mother, to the father, to the sisters, to the brothers, all of us,